Okay. Thank you very much all for joining me here today to join me on this webinar. We're going to have a look at the Cireson Analytics webinar. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Brett Moffat. I'm a solutions architect for Cireson. I'm based in Adelaide in South Australia, and I'm responsible for the Asia Pacific region. For those of you that already have the Cireson products and are using the Cireson portal, what we're talking about here today is the Cireson Analytics, which is a new product that's been added to version 7.3 of the product that was released just a few weeks ago. Now, for those of you that don't know Cireson, Cireson was built on a premise that we should provide all your service and asset management needs delivered on one platform to standardize the tools that you're using, to automate the processes that you do on a day-to-day basis, and to transform the way you do business. We do this by our four main pillars of our business here, which is service management, which takes into consideration all System Center Service Manager componentry and products that fits into there. We also have asset management that we use to ensure compliance and reduce costs and gain control of all your both hardware and software asset management practices, and to be able to track and easily report on critical events that happen within your asset management. Going forward, in the coming weeks, we'll actually be releasing our first in the configuration manager products of our suite of a web portal for configuration manager. You'll be hearing more about that as the time goes on, but that's in preview release at the moment, getting very close to a final release date. And we also have consulting services that we assist people with Microsoft System Center and Intune, and as well as automation, custom design and installation and training as well as our dedicated partner network that we have throughout the world as well. Cireson is across 63 countries. We're actually headquartered in San Diego, California. We've done over 43,000 consulting hours since we first started as a business back in 2012. So lots of help with customers that we've been able to share completely around the world, which is awesome. Here in Australia, we're just shy of 100 customers across Australia, and we're, I think, about 150 across Asia Pacific, which is very cool. As I said before, we do have enterprise consulting that we have when we provide world-class System Center consultants. We are a certified Microsoft Gold partner. We are a Microsoft Enterprise Cloud Alliance member, and all of our employees are ITIL certified as well, and we provide training for all of our products across all our enterprise consulting as well. We also run a community at community.cireson.com. So you may not be aware of this if you haven't seen it before. If you do have the Cireson products and you haven't been a part of the Cireson community before, I really encourage you to go and have a look at that on community.cireson.com. We have lots of different discussions there of people doing different processes and different styles inside their environment, trying to solve different problems that might give you ideas on how to solve your problems, or you may be able to assist them in solving their problem. Lots of people do share code as well, so if someone has come up with some cool enhancements that they've used on their self-service portal, they quite often share the code up there as well, so you don't have to go reinventing the wheel. For people that contribute heavily to the community, we have a Monkey of the Month program which rewards the top contributors to the community, including cash prizes and Cireson swag that we give away. And we continue to develop that community to add more and more features onto there. One of the best things, I think, of course, as well, is to be able to submit and also vote on feature requests to the product. So you can see what other people are actually requesting as well, and maybe vote those ideas up. Or if there's something that you desperately need inside your environment, to be able to put that feature request forward and have the community vote to be able to bring those to the top. Our developers actually look at this every quarter, and we look at that and take the top few feature requests on each one of the products to be able to put it into the next cycle of development. So we are actively listening to our customers and using that feedback to drive what the product actually does. So I encourage you fully to go and have a look at community.cireson.com if you haven't already. So here today we're talking about Cireson Analytics. Now, as I said before, Cireson Analytics was released in version 7.3 of the Cireson portal, which was released about a week and a half ago, I believe. It is built on the Cireson Service Manager portal, so it's intrinsic with that. If you own the Service Management portal, the analyst side of things, you will get the full functionality of analytics as part of that product. Basically, it's reporting that's available anywhere, anytime, so you're not having to go back to your SSRS and look at that sort of information inside the console or inside our SSRS environment. We can create powerful and intuitive custom dashboards of not only Service Manager information, but also any information that we want to be able to include on that. And we'll have a look at that as we go further into this as well. Time period filters is a new one that's been added to this as well. So being able to show a report of, for example, what how many priority ones were open, and being able to show that, but then being able to show them in the last week, the last month, the last quarter, the last year, and being able to quickly change that filter without having to go and write a separate report for each one. So I'll have a look at that during the demo as well, which is really cool, and a nice easy way to be able to change your dashboards on the fly without having to rework it all. And it is optimized for speed and performance. So the whole front end is based on, of course, JavaScript and other web technologies that we put in place there as well to make it as fast as possible. So if you do want some more information, you can get it there at cireson.com/apps/analytics for some more information in there. We do add some new graphs to the existing dashboard experience. So we add the stacked charts, as you can see here on the left, so you can see those two items represented over the top of each other. As I said, we have those date filters built in, and you can create custom queries that span multiple tables or even databases. So if you do have a link between two tables in two completely disparate databases, you can actually write that query, inject it in here, and have a much more complicated report than you ever could before. So really exciting stuff. We also have custom data sources. So being able to retrieve data from not just Service Manager, not just the Cireson portal, but also from any other SQL data source that you can imagine. So for example, configuration manager data, maybe call manager data, operations manager, asset management, even project management. If you're running project management server in the background, being able to connect to that other data source and be able to report on that, so you can see all your dashboards in one easy to consume visual spot, but also without having to spend a huge amount of money on a dedicated dashboarding type tool. And we'll have a look at how to create these custom data sources here in a minute. One other thing I guess that isn't covered in this slide deck here is the analytics ability to store information about work items in I don't want to say a replacement for data warehouse, but in a a light version of the data warehouse, if you like. The ability to be able to store work items in a completely separate database from what the Cireson database is for the portal. So a completely separate database to be able to bring that information over and retain it in there. So if your reporting needs are fulfilled by this dashboarding solution, by the analytics product, you very well could potentially look to not require a data warehouse. We do have grooming that brings that across. I'm not specifically saying, hey, it's all great, you can go and turn your data warehouse off, but it is the sort of thing you could start to look at from a feature perspective and really start to reduce the amount of resources that are being used by a System Center Service Manager. So we know that the data warehouse, if you've been using System Center Service Manager for any length of time, you know the data warehouse does consume quite a large amount of space, but also resources as well. So other servers, more RAM, of course, more CPU space, and if it's in a virtualized environment, that's usually RAM and CPU and disk space is all at a premium. If you're running it on physical machines, then physical machines have their own cost, of course, associated with those physical devices. So being able to reduce the footprint of System Center Service Manager to still get the same types of outcome can be very beneficial for customers. So let's swing over to a demo. Let's actually have a look at what this all is. So if we, actually I just need to do one thing here. I've got my SQL code that I created earlier. So if we jump into here, this is our portal that we've seen many a times before, hopefully. And we jump into here. Now I'm using Forms authentication here to be able to log on, but of course people could log on with single sign-on using the single sign-on process. What I'll actually cover off first, just thinking about it, is what we'll do is we'll jump into, if you haven't upgraded to 7.3 yet, or any of the version 7, you will see the installer does change just a little bit because we're starting to introduce this idea of analytics, and we've got to introduce an entirely new database into that as well. So if we just have a look at the installer, nothing much has changed here that anyone that has run this installer before will recognize this. Install of all of components. This does include now the Cireson Analytics. Now, it is important if you're doing an upgrade, even you're doing an upgrade from one version to another, to always ensure that you do have all of these components installed. If you only select specific ones to install here and you don't install the database, this will also not install any changes to the database. So this option here for select components to install is really only when working with our support teams that they may request you to run some of those. Apart from that, every other time you should be running this install all components here as well. Everything else here looks pretty much similar to what it was before. We're defining our database server name, our app pool identity for our website. We're giving it a password for that service to be able to run as, and it's going to run off and actually check that password for validity. Our application title, what the service is actually going to be run as, our email notification settings in here as well. Yes. Our cache builder settings. So here's our cache builder. Put some password in here. Our groups that we restrict our analysts to, or asset management or knowledge managers to here as well. And this third section here is the area that is new. So this is the Cireson Analytics settings. What service account we're going to be running the services as. So if I put in a password on this one, where we're going to store this analytics database, what's the name of that database, when do we do our first sync. So when we first run this, it's going to do a sync of all the work items that it needs so that it wants to be able to go and grab information from Service Manager database. So this can take some time, and of course it can consume resources while it's doing it. So when you do install this, I recommend that you set this to a date and a time that is not going to inconvenience anybody. So maybe at 1 a.m. instead, to make sure that any impact is mitigated there as well. Run a data sync every X minutes. So this is when that's actually going to do that data warehouse. Now, in the past, the data warehouse ETL jobs, the extract, transform, and load jobs that the data warehouse does to bring that information over, that's all done in custom services within inside System Center Service Manager instead of as SQL jobs, scheduled jobs that actually occur. This sync here for the Cireson Analytics are all within SQL, and they are SQL jobs that are actually running here on a schedule. You can set that schedule here, whatever you would like. The more aggressive, of course, the more CPU, the more data, the more time it's going to take could impact your day-to-day functionality of your environment, depending on resources. So something to be aware of. And then we've got data retention settings. So enter the duration in days that you want to keep your historical data in our analytics database. So here, by default, it's already set to 10 years. On our testing that we've done, it's taken about 30 gig worth of data for 10 years worth of a medium-sized enterprise. So depending on the size of your organization, depending on the number of work items that you're generating, of course, that will change. If you do want to talk about size calculation of that, please get in touch with me, and we can go through that and actually have a look at some calculations that we can do about the amount of size that will actually take up. And then, of course, hitting next will take us through the actual install. But because I've already got it installed, we'll just skip over that part and we'll jump straight in. So 7.3 doesn't look very much different than 7.2 or any of the previous versions here, except when we now come into here, into our settings up here, we have a few more settings that exist. If we go underneath admin settings, before we had all the settings in this one screen. Now we have the settings grouped over here on the right hand side. So we have our current portal version that we can see straight away. If we click into license settings, we'll actually show the license key and all our licensing information. Work item settings is our standard work item settings area that we had before, but just separated out into a different area. Same with activity and group settings. And all of a sudden we have this new one, analytics settings. So here we can come in and adjust our analytics information that we set during the install. So I can change this on the fly if I need to at a later date. We've also introduced, and I believe there's someone on the call here that's going to really enjoy this, header and footer script settings. So the ability to be able to add JavaScript or HTML scripts in the header and footer of every single page. So depending on the environment that you're in, we've got several customers that have two different environments. Might be retail and corporate or something like that, or secure and unsecure. They want to be able to identify that very easily to be able to show what environment they're in. So the header and footer script settings allows us to be able to put that information in to be able to identify the different environments that we're in. For most people, this won't be a feature that you'll probably look at. You may want to put your corporate logo at the top maybe, a navigation bar off to other pages that exist within your IT area. You could inject that into here as well. And here we have the dashboard data source settings. So during the slide deck, I said that we can connect to other databases. So here is a way for us to be able to put those connection strings into other databases. So you can see here I've created one. Now, we already have one for Service Manager built in, and it's built into the system, so you don't need to add one in, but I thought I'd add one in just to be able to show you that we can connect to pretty much anything. I've added one here for Configuration Manager. And as you can see, all I've done here is create connection settings for, so if I edit this, basically server, what server it is, the database that I'm connecting to, and if it's a trusted connection, yes or no. I can enable this, hit save. This will now be enabled. And I can start to use that now to use my dashboards to connect to anything inside that Configuration Manager database. The trusted connection equals true means that it's using the service, the app pool service of the web service to actually connect to that SQL. So the application pool would need read access to the Configuration Manager database to allow this to happen. But as I said, you can connect anything you like. There are different providers that if you do have a different type of environment, you can use these different providers depending on what it is that you're setting up. You can connect to pretty much any SQL data that exists here as well. If you don't have a trusted connection, you can put in username and password into here as well, just using different SQL connection strings. All right, now out of the box, when it first arrives, when you first install it, you will see dashboards, because that's how it was originally. So if we go into navigation settings, we'll actually see these dashboards will still exist inside here. So you would have seen dashboards that existed there before. However, we're now replacing dashboards with analytics. So you can now turn that off. So it's safe to be able to come in and turn this off and just show analytics. And inside our analytics, we can create custom pages, or we have a bunch of reports already built in. But in this case here, if we actually create a new page under here, we can actually create a custom one, and let's call it demo page, something like that. And there we go. I can either assign an AD group, I can make it public for people, or I can just keep it for analysts. So if I come into here, I can now come into demo page, and I can see that I've got myself a blank area to be able to work with. We do have all these reports out of the box, so some trend analysis. We can leave that page. Here's our work overdue. Oh, I'm obviously very good. Work unassigned. Oh, that's not very useful. Work assigned. There we go. No, all of a sudden, hey, there we go. So we can start to see some of that data that we have here. If I hover over it, I can see the labels for each one. All the labels actually appear down the bottom here and actually highlight as I move over them. They actually change color of each one. So in pie graphs that are a little bit smaller, it's easier to be able to see the effect and which one it is that we're talking about. We can look at analyst performance, for example. No, for some reason that data is not working. It's useful. Resolution time, manual activity. Now, as before, out of the box, all of these were what you got. Here it is. You didn't have a chance to be able to change this. Now you can. So we do have an edit button here now that we can actually come in and be able to edit this, and you can see that SQL query that appears directly. Some of the other things that we do get in here now is display selected item details. So if I have this turned on, if I actually turn this on now, I can actually see how many came in by email was 13. If I actually click on that, I now get the list underneath of each of those that appeared in there. Now, obviously this source is only showing us the actual source information, not the work item information that comes along with it as well. But that's just the SQL query that's doing that, and we can hide that back up. So you do get that click-through experience there as well. Hopefully, I tested this one before, we can also enable chart filtering. So here we've got no filter that's appeared onto here as well, but I can start to put some filters around yesterday, this week, this month, this quarter, last year. And so it's very easy to be able to go back and say, well, what did we do last quarter? Last year? I think it's all probably last year, right? It's older than that. Time that I updated some of my dates in some of my incidents, they're probably all very, very old. But as you can see, nothing happened this week or this month. But if we go back to last year, there were 2 incidents that appeared here that came in via the portal, and I can see here that they came in, via the console. And if I click on that, it should take me through, because the work item's not on there, it's not taking me through. But you can see the effect of this filter, and depending on your reports, how easy that is to be able to add that filtering capability there. So let's leave that. We won't save that information. And by the way, if you've got any questions as we go along, please enter them into the questions pane of the GoToWebinar screen, and I'll try and answer them as we go along if I haven't answered them already. Yeah, so please feel free to enter questions into there. So if we have a look at just a standard demo, this demo page that we created earlier, we can change the layout of what it is that we want it to look like. So in this case, I don't know, let's pick that one. We can actually see the areas that we can actually create this content in, and we can add new content as we need to. So the one that we going to have a look at here is the SQL chart widget. So if we have a look at that, it's already created one here. Now if I wanted to move that, simple case of click and drag, and I can move that to each of the panels as I want to. If I wanted it down here to take up the entire page, there it is there as well. So again, very easy to edit and to be able to move around. If I now edit this, and we might do config mgr, for example. Now here in our data source, we have our server management, which is the Cireson database. We have the service manager, which is our service manager database directly from System Center Service Manager. Cireson Analytics, so this is our analytics database if we don't have a data warehouse. And then this is that custom connection that we made before that I created inside here. So if I paste this one here, we don't need the connection string. Get rid of that one there. And I get rid of the rest out of there. Okay. So we can see here that basically what I'm looking for is selecting the client status to be able to see what's going on with client status. This will actually show me a group by depending on what's actually returned from my query. So in this case, I want to group them by the status, and we're going to go with a pie chart. Okay, apply that, and I can see pulling back from Configuration Manager there that I have 1 active client, I have 2 inactive clients, and 15 that have no status whatsoever. So maybe I've got a problem there with all of my machines that exist inside my environment. I can see that information pulling directly from there. If you can start to think of the other data that we can pull from Configuration Manager, one here might be how many viruses that we've received in the last 24-hour period. How many distribution points are waiting, how many packages are waiting for distribution points to go out there. So we can see that there may be a problem with the distribution point, or the kind of information that we need to see on a day-to-day basis to keep Configuration Manager running well. We may have a mobile device management database with critical information that we want to be able to pull back into this sort of a dashboard. May have information from our antivirus solution that we want to be able to bring back into here as well. So start to think of not just seeing your call information, but also all the information that you need to make decisions from a support perspective on a day-to-day basis. So we might add some more content here for a table widget, for example. Here's our table widget. Move it over to here. open this one up. Actually, we won't do that one yet. Let's add another one. Let's add some more. Let's add another SQL one. SQL table widget. Yeah, okay. Move that one. Actually, let's move that one down the screen here. I'll bring that one down to the screen down here. And if we look at Service Manager database, what we can do is let's look at hardware assets status, for example. Now this shows us a way to be able to reach in and grab all of our asset information and be able to show what it's not status. That's what type it is. Sorry, that's a terrible example. Let me try that again. Let's go with a chart widget. We'll bring that one over here instead. So this is hardware. Okay. Select all. Let's go. Let's go column chart. No, it doesn't like me doing that. I need to be able to group by. So that should. Oh, that's why, because it's sorry, because it was on the service management database. It was actually trying to run this SQL query against it, and these databases don't exist within it. So the hardware assets tables don't actually exist in service management database, whereas they do in Service Manager database. So as soon as I do that, you can see it automatically runs this to be able to give me the results of what would actually come out. So in this particular case, I should have base entity ID, display name and type that exists here as well. So if I group these by type, I don't know, another pie chart. I love pie charts. And we can apply that down there. There we go. So we can see the spread there of laptops versus computers versus network devices, for example. So this is all hardware asset information that exists within it. Now, for example, a table widget that I was showing you here before doesn't have to be just on SQL. So if you're not a SQL guru like me, stay. I find SQL very difficult to be able to manipulate. So we might actually create a search. So in this particular case, if we come in and grab all incidents, for example, of and we search the incidents by, I don't know, their status. Let's go with status. Any ones that are currently active here. We search on that. Yep, cool, there's a whole heap there. So if I save this as active incidents, evidence. And I save that. I can see here that it actually saves me a search over here on the left-hand side. Now, if I come back down to analytics and have a look at my demo page, and I edit my page here, and I come into Table Widget, I can see that I've got this saved search content. So if I have a look on here, I can see that search that I've just saved. So I click on that, I hit go, and I can see that appear directly inside there as well. So a way to be able to create these queries very quickly, very rapidly. And again, if I kill this and I add some more content, and I do this with the chart widget, again, same sort of thing with the chart widget. Because I have that saved search, I come in here and I go active incidents. Incidents. And again, same thing. I can group by. What do I want to group it by? Maybe by priority that are currently active, and I want good old pie charts because I love pie charts. And we want to display the selected items details. I click on OK. There it is there. So this shows me that there are 34 with a priority of 9, 3, 2, and there's one high priority one here. If I click on that, because it will click through, it'll show me that active incident. I can click on that and take me off to that page. So great way of being able to report very easily across multiple databases within inside our environment and actually show what's going on within there. So any other questions? Are there any questions around what we've seen here before we go any further? I'm not seeing any questions come up in here. That's fantastic. That either means that I've answered everybody's questions. We've covered everything in record time, or people are really shy. That's fine. No one else sees your questions come up, so please feel free to ask any questions. If you are currently struggling with the data warehouse inside your environment or about to make the jump to install the data warehouse inside your environment, I think this is definitely worth having a look at and considering what it is that you need from a reporting standpoint to be able to show what it is that you can do. Hopefully this will cover the majority of the reporting of what it is that you actually want to cover off in that time. And not only that, but also bring in what other people inside the organization might want to see. So a service desk being able to see not just your queue of work items that are currently sitting there, how long they've been there, what their SLOs are, all of that information, but we might also want to see surface very important SCOM information or performance information for particular business applications. So when the service desk gets all of a sudden a flood of calls, they can lift their head up, look at a dashboard to be able to say, oh yeah, we can see that this particular system is being hammered at the moment, therefore people will start to see performance issues. So they can rapidly respond to this rather than having to run around and ask people, and you can get a much better response to your end users right from the word go. Well, it looks like there's no questions. We're about 20 minutes. I left 20 minutes for questions here, but I'm not seeing any questions come through. So thank you very much for attending here today. If you do have any questions, I'll stay online for a little bit longer and answer any questions if they do come through. If not, thank you very much for attending the webinar here today. I really do appreciate your time. If you feel you would like to get in contact with me about this, more than happy to show you a bit more in depth or discuss it specifically about your environment. thank you very much again for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you at the next webinar.